Why the quick movement by NBN Co, Steve?
TPG's already started getting fibre into the basements of apartments and offices. And if they're left unchecked, we'll just continue rolling out their own network. And they're also signing up those dwellings and offices and apartments to exclusivity so that they'll be the only retailer in those businesses. Those are the most value-rich areas for a broadband rollout. NBN Co's been concerned for some time about it because if TPG is left alone, they've said that they can get to 500,000 of those complexes. That would take a huge amount of value out of the NBN. Ziggy Switkowski told the Senate committee earlier this month that he thought TPG alone could take between 5 and 10% off the value of the national broadband network. Telstra and Optus have said if TPG is allowed to keep rolling out, they'll do the same thing. So the value destruction could be multiples of that 5 to 10% that Switkowski talked about. The Vertigan Committee, which is looking at the cost-benefit analysis of the NBN, has been asked to review this whole issue and has also been asked to produce an opinion on it earlier than their full report, which is due, I think, mid-year, about July. NBN Co, the new CEO, Bill Morrow, who started a couple of weeks ago, has obviously decided they can't hang around, that they've got to do something to freeze, in effect, the TPG rollout by saying that they're going to do their own fibre to the multi-unit dwelling. They haven't said whether it's fibre to the basement, because one of the options which Switkowski acknowledged to me before the Senate, open to them, would be to actually run fibre throughout the buildings. Much more expensive, much more time-consuming option, but obviously a better outcome for the users. I think they'll actually do the fibre to the basement of their own and rely on their own brand and the fact that they can say to the owners of these complexes, if you take our service, you've got 40-something retailers who will compete to provide services, and your apartment owners or office owners can choose which service they want. Whereas if you take the TPG service, you get the TPG service. So they've got a reasonably compelling competitive response. They've said already that they'll start rolling it out in the inner city areas of Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. One assumes they'll actually try to match the footprint of TPG, very similar to the Foxtel Optus wars back in the 1990s, where Telstra just followed the Optus vans down the street rolling out their own cable.
This is terribly inefficient from a kind of point of view of productivity, because you have got the same service running down the same street to the same building, but really for NBN Co it's life or death, isn't it?
It's very important, because if they don't have those profits in the urban areas and don't have the maximum profits in the urban areas, a project which is already very marginal, it's got an IRR of somewhere between 3 and 5%, would become quite unmarginal. But more particularly, the whole concept of the NBN is that you have this national uniform wholesale pricing, and in effect a cross-subsidy running from urban Australia through to rural and regional, where obviously the costs are higher and the revenues are lower. If competitors are allowed to cherry-pick the best parts of the network, clearly that cross-subsidy starts to become quite difficult to manage, and the whole economics of the NBN come under a huge amount of pressure, and they're already under enormous amounts of pressure. I think there's a question mark here, because we don't know what the Vertigan Committee will say about competition. We know Malcolm Turnbull would like to have competitive infrastructure, but the problem with competitive infrastructure obviously is that it then undermines that entire notion of a uniform national wholesale price.
Finally, Steve, though, I guess the results for NBN Co come out tomorrow, their third quarter results. It's not making money. Obviously, it's got a huge amount of costs. If they go with this process much sooner than expected, that's going to ramp up their losses for the next couple of quarters, right?
The NBN Co's in this very early stage of the rollout, where you're spending a lot of money building a network which doesn't have very many customers, which is why they've got these big losses. In some respects, targeting urban areas and multi-dwelling buildings would actually bring forward revenue and profits. It might bring them forward from year 7 to year 5, but it would bring them forward, because that's actually where the more affluent customer base lies. Because the rollout's been reprioritised to put fibre out where people don't have broadband today, or don't have any kind of adequate broadband today. So that's rural, regional Australia. This is a departure from that revised strategy to say, okay, there's a competitive threat, so we'll now both continue to roll out to those people who don't have broadband today, but we're going to add another dimension and compete head-on with TPG in the urban areas.
One to watch. Steve Bartholomew's, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jackson.